The last thing I expected to hear after 5 years away was my own mother snapping, "Why? What are you doing here?" I was still standing on the front porch with my suitcase when she yanked the door halfway open, squinted at me like I was a stranger, and said it again, slower this time, like the words tasted bad. "Why are you here?" "My name is Cassidy. I am 27, and in that moment I realized my family hadn't missed me for a single second." My dad stepped in behind her, still in his perfect pressed shirt, looked me up and down and laughed under his breath. "This house doesn't welcome people who walk out and come crawling back," he said. "What happened, Cass? The bar you tell jokes in finally kicked you out?" I heard a familiar click behind him. My brother was already holding up his phone, framing me in the doorway. "Guys, look who showed up," he said, like he was hosting a live show. "Our failed sister, back from whatever bus station she's been singing for coffee money." My sister came down the stairs, eyes glued to my shoes before they ever reached my face. "I can smell cheap motel from here," she said. "Next time, use the side door. That is, if you even have a next time." Mom folded her arms. "Your siblings are successful now. No one here is lending you money just because life hit you like you deserved." My dad reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled bill, and flicked it at my feet. "Cab fare," he said. "Or buy some deodorant. You reek of disappointment." The bill fluttered down between us. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just looked at each of them, memorized every laugh line and every smug little smirk, then turned around and walked back to my car. 3 days later, during my sold-out show in Seattle, those same 4 people stood backstage, shaking and desperate, begging me to fix the mess they had made. If you want to know how we got from that porch to that stage, stay with me, because what happened in between is the part no one in my family ever thought I would live long enough to tell. When I tell people what happened on that porch, they always ask the same question first. How can your own parents talk to you like that? The honest answer is, they have been talking to me like that my whole life. It just used to sound prettier. I grew up in a manicured suburb outside Denver where every lawn was perfect, and every family pretended they were starring in their own luxury commercial. My dad, Greg, was the regional vice president for a string of luxury car dealerships, the kind of guy who wore a name badge to community events even when no one asked. My mom, Monica, ran a home staging and interior business that only survived because her father kept writing checks. My older brother, Brandon, was the golden child on track to be an orthopedic surgeon. My little sister, Chloe, was the baby influencer in training, always dressed for the camera, always framed just right for the Christmas cards. Then there was me. I was the kid who did impressions of teachers at the dinner table, who memorized late-night monologues, who filled spiral notebooks with jokes and stories instead of chemistry notes. The first time I told them I wanted to be a comedian, my dad laughed so hard he actually wiped his eyes. "That is adorable," he said. "Try again. What do you really want to do?" My mom did not laugh. She just looked at me like I had said I wanted to be a full-time disappointment. "No one in this family works for tips," she said. "You have the grades for law or medicine. You are not going to throw that away to be some bar clown." Brandon smirked across the table. "You could go on those open mic nights where everyone is drunk enough to clap for anything. That sounds like your level." Chloe filmed me on her phone, added a glitter filter, and whispered, "Imagine telling people my sister is a comedian. I would die." That night, I went to my room and watched stand-up clips until 2 in the morning. I watched people take the worst things that ever happened to them and flip them into laughter. I watched crowds roar for stories about families just like mine. At 22, after one more screaming match about my phase, I packed a duffel bag, my laptop, and 3 notebooks, and I left. I moved to Los Angeles with a couple $1,000s, a couch to crash on, and a schedule that was mostly minimum wage by day, unpaid open mics by night. They did not hug me goodbye. My mom stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and said, "When this blows up in your face, do not expect to move back in." My dad added, "Call when you are ready to talk about real careers again." Brandon's parting gift was, "Try not to end up on some cringe compilation." Chloe just lifted her phone and said, "Say hi to my followers, future Uber driver." Then they shut the door. The first year in LA almost broke me. I worked at a coffee shop, then at a diner, then as a production assistant running errands for people who did not remember my name. I bombed on stage so often that I started to wonder if my family had been right about me all along. But slowly, painfully, things started to move. One late set at a tiny club got posted online. A short clip of me talking about fake perfect families went viral on TikTok. Someone from a podcast saw it and invited me on. A talent manager came to one of my shows by accident and asked if I had more material. I said yes, even though I only had 30 minutes that actually worked. I stayed up for 3 nights, turning it into an hour. By year 3, I was touring small clubs. By year 4, I had a streaming special. By year 5, I had an apartment in LA with my name on the lease. No roommates, dishes in the sink, my own couch that I actually paid for. I made more than enough to cover my bills, my health insurance, and a therapist who helped me understand that what I grew up in was not normal, not loving, not something I had to excuse forever. In those same 5 years, my family behaved like I had never existed. They took new family photos with just the 4 of them, posted holiday pictures captioned "My whole world" with no empty chair, no mention of a missing daughter. My mom's business page showed staged houses and staged smiles. My dad posted photos from dealership award nights with Brandon in a white coat and Chloe in perfect lighting. I watched from my phone, thousands of miles away, invisible until the night my special hit the top of a streaming chart and my name started trending next to the words, "Stand Up." My mom did not call to say she was proud. She texted me once, 2 years in, just to ask if I was still alive. When I sent back a thumbs up, she never replied. They did not miss me. They just paused me, like a show they were bored with, until they thought I might be useful again. So 5 years later, when I pulled into that same Denver driveway, it was not because I wanted back in. I went to see if anything had changed, if there was even a crack of decency left in them. Standing on that porch, listening to them talk to me like I was dirt on their welcome mat, I got my answer. On the 6-hour drive back to the airport, with their laughter still echoing in my chest, I realized something important. I had not just built a life in those 5 years. I had built a microphone, an audience, and a network of people who actually listened when I spoke. And my family had just handed me the ugliest story I had ever told. I did not decide to drive back to Denver in some big dramatic moment. It was more like a slow leak that finally emptied the tank. One night after a show in Portland, I was sitting on a hotel bed scrolling through old photos, and I tapped on my mom's profile by reflex. There it was again. A Christmas picture of 4 people in matching pajamas. The caption, "My whole world." I stared at it for a long time, then opened my notes app and wrote one line. What if I just showed up? A week later, my car was full of road snacks and overnight bags, and I was heading east on the interstate, telling myself it was just curiosity. I convinced myself I was being mature, that I wanted closure, that maybe I would knock on the door and they would at least act like they were surprised and a little ashamed. I did not tell my manager or my friends where I was going. When you grow up in a house like mine, you get really good at lowering your expectations. I still managed to aim too high. By the time I turned into the old neighborhood, my stomach was in my throat. The houses all looked the same, but everything felt smaller. The trees Dad used to brag about paying extra for were taller now, shading the perfect lawn in front of our perfect white 2-story. My hands shook a little when I parked in the driveway. I sat there for a full minute with the engine off, watching my own breath fog the windshield, arguing with myself about whether to put the car back in reverse and pretend this was just a weird detour. Then I thought about every night I spent alone on some sticky bar stage in LA, bombing in front of 8 drunk strangers while my family played happy on Facebook. I got out of the car. I dragged my suitcase up those stupid brick steps that used to feel like a red carpet. I rang the doorbell and waited, feeling my heart slam against my ribs like it was trying to escape. When the deadbolt finally slid back and my mom pulled the door halfway open, for 3 seconds her face went blank, like her brain was buffering. Then her mouth tightened, and the first thing out of it was, "Why? What are you doing here?" No Cass, no "oh my God," no hug, just annoyance. Like I was a salesperson she had to get rid of. My dad appeared over her shoulder, taking in my jeans, my road-wrinkled jacket, the suitcase. He smiled in that way that never reached his eyes. "Well, look who remembered the address," he said. "Let me guess. Comedy doesn't pay the bills and now you want your old room back?" Before I could answer, I heard a little electronic chime and saw my brother slide into the hallway, phone already up, recording. "Guys, check this out," he said, aiming the camera at my face. "The prodigal clown returns. Should we let her in or just toss her $1?" From the stairs, my sister's voice floated down. "You can smell Greyhound from here," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Next time, try the side door. Or better, don't." My mom folded her arms like she was posing for an ad about tough love. "Your brother is in residency. Your sister has brand deals and a wedding next year," she said. "Nobody here is bailing you out, Cassidy. You made your choice." My dad dug around in his pocket, pulled out a crumpled 20, and flicked it onto the porch. It fluttered against my shoe. "Cab fare," he said, "or hit a drugstore. You smell like a bad decision." They laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a surprised little hiccup. Full, entertained laughter like they were at a show and I was the punchline. I remember the way my brother tilted his phone to catch the bill on the ground, the way my sister smiled into the camera over my mother's shoulder, like this was a bit they had rehearsed. And I remember something else, too. I remember realizing that I had nothing left to say to any of them, so I didn't say a word. I looked at each face one by one and filed every detail away, like evidence. Then I turned around, gripped the handle of my suitcase, and walked back down those steps. I heard my dad mutter something about sensitive behind me. I heard my brother narrating to his followers. "She's leaving. Guess the free ride is over." I did not look back. I drove to a cheap hotel near the airport and checked in under my first and middle name. I sat on the end of the bed in the glow of the little desk lamp, still in my jacket, and finally checked my phone. Notifications were already popping up. Someone had tagged me in a blurry story from my brother's account before he realized he might not want my fans seeing what he'd posted. I tapped it. There I was, on the porch, suitcase by my side, my dad's hand in frame throwing the bill, my mom's voice ringing out, "You reek of disappointment." Brandon had captioned it, "When the family dropout shows up looking for a handout," with a laughing emoji. There were comments from his friends. "Yikes. Is she okay? Lamau brutal." I screen recorded the whole thing. Then I saved it. Twice. Then I backed it up to the cloud. My hands were still shaking, but not from shock anymore. It was something sharper. I scrolled through my own messages and saw the gaps where my family should have been. Nothing on my birthday. Nothing when my special dropped. Nothing when my name hit the trending tab. But now, when they could turn me into a joke, when it made them look like winners standing over a loser, suddenly I was worth a 30-second story. Lying there in that stupid hotel bed, I realized something important. That visit had not been about seeing whether they missed me. It had been the final test of who they really were, and they had just given me the clearest answer possible, on camera, in their own words. I am a comedian. My job is to take the worst thing in the room and hold it up to the light so everyone can see it. For 5 years, I had been holding back when it came to my family. That night in Denver, watching their story on my phone, I decided I was done holding back. The first thing I did when I got back to LA was not cry, not call my therapist, not even sleep. I opened my laptop, dragged that screen recording into a new folder and labeled it Evidence. Then I opened my set list for a show I had in 2 nights and started typing. I did not write. My mom called me a disappointment and threw money at my feet. I wrote, "You ever go home after 5 years and realize your family has better material than you do?" I wrote about the way wealthy suburbs love second chances as long as you never actually need one. I wrote about parents who pose in matching pajamas and hashtag my whole world while quietly cropping one kid out of the frame. I wrote about siblings who treat your life like content. The night of the show, my manager pulled me aside before I went on stage. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "This is a lot closer to the bone than you usually go." I shrugged. "They wanted a clown," I said. "Might as well give them a circus." The room was packed, the kind of crowd that had seen my streaming special and wanted more of the honest family stuff. They got it. I told the story, names blurred, locations vague, but details sharp enough that anyone who grew up in a house like mine felt it in their teeth. I did the porch scene almost word for word. When I mimed my dad flicking that crumpled bill at my feet and said, "Cab fare, you reek of disappointment." The whole room went quiet, then groaned, then laughed that uncomfortable laugh people have when something is both awful and recognizable. After the show, a woman about my mom's age came up to me with tears in her eyes. "My daughter does tattoos," she said. "We didn't talk for 3 years because I told her no one would marry a girl who draws on people for a living. I realized tonight I sounded just like your parents. I called her during your set. She didn't pick up, but I left a message." Comments like that poured into my inbox after clips from the set hit TikTok. People stitched my jokes with their own stories about being the weird kid, the art kid, the not good enough kid, in families obsessed with degrees and job titles. Strangers recognized themselves in my pain faster than my own parents ever had. And because the internet is a small town dressed up like a big city, those clips made their way back to the actual small town I had left behind. A local station in Denver had a host who liked my stuff. He invited me to call in for a segment about breaking away from toxic expectations. I said yes. On air, he asked if the family from my jokes knew I was talking about them. I said, "They know they exist. They know I exist. That's about as close as we ever get." Then he asked if I was worried they would be mad. I told him the truth. My dad always says, "If you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about." I'm just following his advice. I never once said the name of the dealership chain or my mom's business. I did not have to. In a place like Denver suburbia, you say, "luxury cars on the east side," and "home staging queen with a taste for other people's money," and people can connect their own dots. A week later, I got a message from someone I had met at an industry event in Colorado years ago. She worked in real estate, the high-end kind my mom drooled over. "Is that about your family?" she asked, then added, "Because if it is, it explains a lot." I asked her what she meant. She said certain people had been wondering how my mom kept her company afloat when the market dipped. She said everyone knew my grandfather was quietly paying for a lot of creative projects, but some were starting to feel weird about recommending a stager who bragged more than she delivered. "I'm not saying anything," she wrote, "but your story made some people take a second look." Around the same time, an old friend of mine from high school messaged me. He now worked in marketing for a rival dealership group. "Your bit about the car guy who lies to his family about his sales numbers?" he wrote. "We played that at lunch. Everyone knew exactly who it was. My phone lit up the next morning with a missed call from a number I recognized but had not seen in years. My mom's cell, then the salon line, then the house phone. No voicemail at first, just call after call, like I was the one who owed her an explanation. By noon, she finally left a message. Her voice was tight and sticky sweet. "Hey honey, it's Mom. I saw some videos people tagged me in. Very funny, very creative. I wish you had told me you were using us in your act. Anyway, we really need to talk. Things are complicated right now. Call me back, okay? We're still family." An hour later, my dad left one. His tone went from calm to angry in 30 seconds. "Cassidy, this is your father. I know what you're doing. You think you're clever, dragging us into your little routine, turning private matters into jokes. You need to stop. You are playing with people's livelihoods. Call me back. Immediately." When I did not answer, the next message was different. "Cass, listen," he said, trying for reasonable. "Maybe we were a little harsh when you came by. That's water under the bridge. Let's sit down like adults and clear the air before you say anything else you can't take back." I played the messages on speaker while I made coffee and waited for the next call I knew was coming. It did not come from my parents. It came from my Aunt Rochelle. She was my mom's older sister, the one who used to sneak me candy at family dinners and whisper that not everyone had to be a lawyer or a doctor to matter. "Hi, baby," she said when I picked up. "I heard you came home and it went badly. Your mother is hysterical. She says you're trying to ruin them." I let her talk. She told me my mom's clients were canceling, that people were asking questions about money and loans and whether the business was okay. She said my dad was having trouble at work because someone higher up had seen one of my clips and asked some pointed questions about his performance. "You need to be careful," she said. "You don't know what you're starting." I stared at the crumpled 20 I had taped above my desk as a reminder and said, "No, Aunt Ro, I know exactly what I'm starting." She went quiet. Then, softly, she asked, "Are you doing this to hurt them?" I thought about it. I thought about every missed birthday, every cropped-out photo, every joke at my expense, every second of that porch video. "I'm telling the truth," I said. "If the truth hurts them, maybe they should ask why." That night, I sat down with my notebook again. So far, I had just turned my life into jokes. Now I started turning it into a plan. Before I went after anybody, I went back to the source of their power. In my family, money never came from my parents' hard work the way they like to brag. It came from my mother's father, my grandfather, Walter. He was the one who built an actual company back in the 70s, a regional logistics business that he sold for a very real amount of money. He was the one who wrote the checks that paid for private schools, med school, and every creative business my mom decided she wanted. I hadn't heard his voice in years, but 2 days after my set about the porch incident started making the rounds, my phone lit up with a number from Colorado I didn't recognize. When I answered, it was him. "Cassidy," he said. No nickname, no small talk, just my full name like he was calling roll. "We need to talk. In person." I asked if my mother was with him. He said, "No, and she's not going to be." He suggested a diner off the highway about 40 minutes outside Denver, a place I remembered from childhood road trips as the stop where we were allowed to split one milkshake if we had behaved. I flew into Denver on a cheap last-minute ticket and rented a car under my middle name. The parking lot was half empty when I pulled in. Walter's old pickup truck was already there, the same one he'd been driving since I was a teenager, paint faded, bumper a little crooked. Inside, he was sitting in a booth with a cup of black coffee and a folded newspaper, looking like someone had carved him out of all the things my parents pretended to be. When he saw me, he didn't stand up. He just nodded at the seat across from him. "Tell me," he said. Not the part you put on stage, the part that actually happened. So I did. I told him about ringing the doorbell after 5 years, about my mom asking why I was there like I was a stray dog, about my dad tossing that bill, about my brother filming and my sister doing commentary for his followers. I told him about the years before that too, about how they talked about my career, the way they froze me out of their version of the family. I handed him my phone and let him watch the video Brandon had posted before he panicked and deleted it. Walter watched the clip twice, slow, his jaw ticking just enough to notice. When he handed my phone back, his hand shook slightly. Whether from age or anger, I couldn't tell. "Your mother did not mention the coins," he said quietly. "Or your father's joke." Then he asked the question that mattered. "What exactly are you doing now, Cass? People are calling me. They say you're telling stories about us. They say it's causing trouble." I could have lied. I didn't. I told him about the set in LA, the podcast, the TikTok clips. I told him I had never used names or addresses or company logos. I told him I had only talked about my life, my feelings, and facts anyone could find in public records if they cared enough to look. I told him that when you say luxury car VP who lives for his numbers and home stager who borrows from daddy to stay afloat, people who live in that world recognize the silhouette. "Are you trying to ruin them?" he asked. I stared at the sugar packets between us. "I am trying to stop pretending," I said. "For 5 years they pretended I didn't exist. They pretended everything was perfect. Now I'm telling the truth about what that cost me. If the truth ruins them, I think that says more about them than me." He sat back, the vinyl seat creaking. For a long minute, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerators and a waitress refilling coffee at another table. Then he told me something I had never heard before. "I didn't want to bankroll that staging business," he said. "Your grandmother did. She thought it would give your mother purpose. I wrote the first check because I believed in second chances. I wrote the second because I didn't want to start a war at Christmas. The third one, last year, I knew I was being a fool." He looked older when he said it, like admitting it out loud added 10 years. He asked how much I knew about their finances. I said a lot, and watched his eyebrows go up. I explained how much was on the second mortgage of the house, how many times his name showed up as a guarantor on my mom's business loans, how far behind they were on certain payments, how much Brandon owed in student loans, how often they had been late on Chloe's credit card bills when she was still in school. Nothing hacked, nothing stolen, just public filings and a friend in lending who owed me a favor and ran some general numbers without breaking any laws. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a decade. "Your mother says you're exaggerating," he said. "Lying. Making her look bad." I shrugged. "The numbers don't care how anyone looks." He drummed his fingers on the table for a moment, then stopped, like he had come to a decision. "I don't like revenge," he said. "It rots you from the inside. But I like being lied to even less, and I have been enabling lies." He looked me straight in the eye. "I am not giving your mother another dollar for that business. Not one. If she wants it to survive, she can make it work without my money. If she cannot, it dies." I felt something shift, like a fault line under a city finally giving way. This was not me pulling a string. This was the hand that had been propping their entire life up finally letting go. "She will blame you," I said. He nodded. "She already does," he said. "She thinks you've turned me against her. The truth is, she did that herself. You just turned on the lights." We left it there. He paid for both coffees in cash, left too big of a tip, and walked me out to the parking lot. Before he climbed into his truck, he put a hand on my shoulder. "I don't approve of everything you're doing," he said, "but I understand why. That's more than you've ever gotten from them." On the drive back to my hotel, my phone started vibrating nonstop. 6 missed calls from my mother, 2 from the house, 1 from my dad. I let them all go to voicemail. When I finally listened, my mother was beyond controlled. Her voice was raw, half sobbing, half screaming. "What did you say to him?" she demanded. "He cut me off, Cass. He said no more loans. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed my business. You've poisoned my father against me. You are sick. You need help." My dad's message was colder. "I don't know what kind of stories you're spinning," he said. "But if you think you can tear this family down without consequences, you're dumber than I thought." The last message that night wasn't from either of them. It was from Chloe. Her voice was small, stripped of the usual Instagram gloss. "Cass," she said, "I saw the clips. I saw the comments. I saw Grandpa. I don't know what's true anymore, but I know I'm scared. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Mark's parents are asking questions about money and about that video Brandon posted. I don't know what to do." For the first time, someone in that house sounded less angry than afraid. It didn't make me soften, but it did make me realize something important. My plan wasn't just about watching them fall. It was about seeing who tried to climb out of the rubble and who just dug in deeper. 2 days after Chloe's voicemail, my Aunt Rochelle called and said the words I had been waiting for since this whole thing started. "We're having a family meeting," she said, like it was a peace summit. "Everyone wants to sit down and talk this through." I almost laughed. "At their house?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "Neutral ground. That diner off the highway where you met your grandfather. Your parents. Your grandparents. Brandon, Chloe, me. Nobody else." I agreed on one condition. "I'm not walking into an ambush," I said. "If anyone else shows up, I'm walking out." She promised. Saturday afternoon, the parking lot looked like a car commercial gone wrong. My dad's sedan, my mom's SUV, my grandparents' old truck, my aunt's crossover, all lined up in a neat row like they had arrived for a family brunch instead of an emotional crime scene. I sat in my rental for a minute, watching them through the windshield. My mom's movements were jerky, like everything in her was wired too tight. My dad had his arms crossed, jaw clenched. Brandon looked like he was about to go into surgery, all serious and composed for an audience. Chloe stood a half step behind everyone, coat wrapped around herself even though it was not that cold. When I finally walked in, conversation died like someone had hit a mute button. They were at 2 tables pushed together in the back. My dad stood up partway, like he was about to give a speech at a company party. "Cass? Good. You're here," he said. "Let's all sit down and have a real conversation. There's been a lot of miscommunication." I slid into the seat at the end and looked at him. "Which part was a miscommunication?" I asked. "The part where you threw money at my feet, or the part where you told me I smelled like a bad decision?" My mom flinched and Brandon shifted in his chair. "We were joking," my mom said quickly. "You know how your father is. We were surprised. It came out wrong." My grandparents were watching all of us like it was a show they hadn't paid to see. My grandfather's face was carved stone. My grandmother's mouth was a thin line. "You always take things too seriously," my dad added. "We've said things before. You've said things. That's family." I pulled my phone out and set it on the table. "You mean like this?" I said. I hit play on the saved video from Brandon's story. The sound was tinny through the tiny speaker, but every word was clear. My mother's voice asking why I was there. My father calling me a disappointment. The rip of the bill in the air. Their laughter. Brandon's caption floated across the image, preserved in the screen recording. When the clip ended, nobody spoke. The clink of dishes in the kitchen suddenly sounded way too loud. My grandmother was the first to break the silence. "Monica," she said, turning to my mother. You didn't tell us it was like that. My mom's eyes filled with tears on cue. I was upset, she said. She showed up after 5 years without a word. I said some things I shouldn't have. But this, she waved a hand like she could swat away the last 2 months. This campaign she's running against us, it's killing us. Clients are canceling, people are talking. Your father pulled my funding. Greg is having problems at work. Brandon's hospital is calling him in. Chloe's engagement is in trouble. She is destroying our lives because of a couple of bad jokes. My grandfather gave a short, humorless laugh. A couple of bad jokes don't sign mortgages in my name, he said. A couple of bad jokes don't ask for a third loan when the first two never turned a profit. He turned to me. Tell them what you told me, he said. So I did. I laid out the basic numbers in simple language, not to impress anyone, but so there would be no room to pretend they hadn't heard. The second mortgage, the unpaid vendors, the loans with my grandfather as guarantor, the way my dad's sales numbers had looked on paper versus what his company had actually reported to certain industry trackers. Brandon shifted again. You went digging into our finances? He said. That's insane. I shrugged. It's amazing what you can find when you stop pretending everything is fine and start looking at what's actually there. My dad's face was turning a color I had only seen once before when a deal fell apart in front of his boss. You had no right, he said. This is family business. So is throwing money at me on the porch, I shot back. So is erasing me from every picture for 5 years. You keep calling it family business like that means I'm obligated to help you keep your secrets. I'm not. Chloe suddenly spoke up, voice shaking. He's not wrong, she said quietly. Everyone turned to her like they had forgotten she could talk. About what? My mother demanded. Chloe looked at me, then at our parents. About the money, she said. About the lies. Mark's parents ran a background check. They saw the loans, the missed payments, the second mortgage. They asked me why you told them you were helping me with the wedding when you aren't. Her eyes filled, but the words were steady. They asked me why my brother posted a video of my sister being humiliated. They asked me if that's how we treat each other. My mother stared at her like she'd betrayed the script. We are under attack, she said. Your sister is making us look like fools. Of course they're nervous. Chloe shook her head. No, she said. She is making us look like what we are. That's what scares them. Brandon snapped. You're taking her side now? After everything our parents have done for you? Chloe looked at him with a kind of tired sadness I hadn't seen on her before. What they did was for them, she said. For the photos? For the image? Not for us. My aunt tried to jump in then, hands up like a referee. Okay, she said. This is getting heated. The point is, Cass, whatever you're doing is causing real damage. Your mother is begging your father for money we don't have. Your dad is being called in by his company. Your brother's program is asking questions. Chloe's life is falling apart. You've made your point. You were hurt. We get it. Now it's time to stop. I looked around the table. Really looked. My mom's mascara was smudged, but there was still that familiar flicker of anger under the tears, the part that always blamed someone else. My dad was already thinking about his next move, who he could call to fix this. Brandon's jaw was locked, not with remorse, but with frustration that his golden boy narrative was cracking. Only Chloe and my grandfather looked like they were actually sitting in the wreckage and recognizing it for what it was. Here's the thing, I said. I'm not the one who started this. I left. I built a life somewhere else. I didn't speak about you publicly for years. You pulled me back into this the second you decided I was a funny story for your followers. I didn't ruin your business. I didn't make you lie about your sales. I didn't swipe your credit card for vacations and pretend the money was endless. I just stopped playing along. My mother's face crumpled. She slid out of her chair and actually knelt on the diner floor beside me, grabbing for my hand. "Please," she said. "Cass, please. I know we were hard on you. I know we made mistakes. I'm sorry, okay? I am. I will say it as many times as you want. But you have to stop. Talk to your grandfather. Talk to whoever you've been talking to online. Fix this. We can't lose the house. Your father can't lose his job. Brandon's career. Chloe's future. It's all falling apart. We are your family." Her fingers dug into my wrist. My dad hissed, "Monica, get up," through his teeth. But he didn't stand to help her. For a second I saw her the way other people probably did. A desperate woman on her knees asking her child for mercy. It didn't move me. My therapist would probably have something to say about that later, if I ever told her. I gently pulled my hand back. "You're sorry," I said. "For what?" She blinked. For how we reacted when you came home. For what we said. For not calling. For deleting you from things. She stumbled over the words like they were rocks on her tongue. "We were wrong. You are sorry because you are losing things," I said. "Not because of what you did. If all of this went away tomorrow and everything went back to normal, you would still tell the story about your crazy comedian daughter who overreacted to a joke." I stood up. My chair scraped the floor louder than I expected. Every head at the table snapped up. "I'm not here to negotiate a ceasefire," I said. "I'm not here to fix the consequences of choices I didn't make. I am here so you all understand one thing very clearly. I am done protecting you from who you are. I will keep telling my story. I will keep using my life in my work. I won't use your names. I won't break any laws, but I will not pretend this never happened to make you more comfortable." My grandfather nodded once, slowly, like a judge confirming a sentence he already knew he was going to give. My grandmother looked away, staring at the sugar packets instead of my mother on her knees. Brandon muttered something about needing to talk to a lawyer. Chloe just watched me with wet eyes and a strange little spark, like something in her had finally snapped in a good way. As I walked out of the diner, my aunt called after me, "Cass, where does this end?" I didn't turn around. "When they stop pretending I'm the problem," I said. In the weeks that followed, things didn't just crumble, they collapsed. My mom's staging company shut down quietly after my grandfather refused to sign off on another loan, and her last few big clients decided they didn't want their properties associated with drama. My dad's company moved him out of his fancy VP position after internal audits raised too many questions he couldn't answer without admitting he had been pumping up the numbers at home. Brandon's residency director called him in after someone forwarded that porch video anonymously to HR, and while they didn't kick him out, they made it very clear that someone who enjoyed humiliating family members online might not be ready for the kind of authority he thought he deserved. Chloe's engagement didn't survive the background checks and the screaming matches about who had ruined what. The house that used to be the backdrop for all those perfect photos went up for sale with a bland listing that didn't mention the ghost of the daughter they had pretended never lived there. And me? I did what I had always done. I wrote. I turned the diner, the voicemail, the kneeling, the anger, the fallout into a new hour of material. My tour schedule had a new date circled in red now, one that would pull all of this into one sharp, bright point. A sold-out show in Seattle 3 days away, where the story would reach more ears than my family ever imagined when they laughed at me on that porch. The night of the Seattle show, the theater felt like another planet compared to that porch in Denver. The marquee outside had my name in lights. The lobby buzzed with people in jackets and hoodies holding plastic cups of wine. And somewhere, a merch table with my face on a t-shirt was doing better than my mother's business had in years. I should have been in the green room pacing and mouthing punchlines to myself like usual, but I was standing in a hallway staring at a text from my manager instead. Heads up, it said. Your family is here. For a second, I honestly thought it was a joke, some dark bit we'd cooked up and I'd forgotten about. Then he appeared at the end of the hallway, eyes wide, head set crooked around his neck. They're backstage, he said. All four of them. I can kick them out if you want. I shook my head. No, I said. Just show me. He led me down the narrow corridor that smelled like old wood and hairspray. At the far end, outside the green room door, my past was lined up in a crooked row. My mother was leaning against the wall, makeup smeared, clutching a tissue that had already given up. My father was pacing a short strip of carpet, running his hand over his hair like he could smooth reality back into place. Brandon stood with his back to the wall, arms crossed, staring at the floor. Chloe was a few feet away, not touching any of them, coat still on, eyes red but clear. When they saw me, everything in the hallway seemed to pull tighter. My mother straightened and then, to my manager's visible horror, slid down to her knees right there on the concrete. Cass, she said, voice shaking, please, we need to talk. Please, baby. The word baby hit my chest like a rock. She hadn't called me that since before she decided my jokes were a phase she could humiliate out of me. I stayed where I was. You said what you needed to say at the diner, I answered, and on the porch. And in all the years you didn't say anything at all. My dad stepped in like he was cutting into a negotiation. Okay, look, he said, hands up. We get it. You're angry. You made your point. We're paying for it. The business is gone. The house is on the market. Your mother is not well. Your brother's career is in jeopardy. Chloe's wedding is canceled. You won. Congratulations. Now we need you to fix it. I almost laughed. Fix what? I asked. Your reputation? Your bank account? The version of our family you sell to other people? My mom reached for my hand, fingers clawing at the air. We will do whatever you want, she said. We'll apologize on camera. We'll tell people we were wrong about you. We'll beg your grandfather anything. Just please stop talking about us. Stop giving people reasons to look. We can't take any more. Brandon looked up then, and there was something like shame in his face, but it was twisted with resentment. This isn't you, he said. You're not this cruel. You used to be the funny one, not the vindictive one. This obsession is going to eat you alive. I looked at him, the brother who had held up his phone while I stood on a porch with a suitcase and no home, broadcasting my humiliation for laughs. I built a life without you, I said. I built it out of everything you said would destroy me. I went to therapy. I learned how to set boundaries. I learned how to stop letting you define me. If anything saved me from being eaten alive, it was that. Chloe's voice cut in, small but steady. They're not ready to hear this, she said quietly, but I am. She took a step toward me. I'm sorry, Cass. For the comments, for the laughing, for letting them erase you while I posed for the camera. I broke off the engagement because I realized I was about to build a new lie on top of the old one. I don't know who I am without all of that yet, but I know I don't want to be this. Tears slipped down her cheeks and she didn't wipe them away. You don't owe us a thing, she said, but if there's any part of you that ever loved me, I hope one day you'll let me prove I can be better than this. For the first time in a long time, something other than anger cracked through my chest. Before I could answer, my manager tapped his watch. Cass, he whispered, we're 2 minutes out. I looked back at the 4 people in front of me, my mother on her knees, my father trying to hold on to control like a drowning man clutching a briefcase, my brother caught between pride and panic, my sister standing on the edge of a life she hadn't chosen yet. I can't fix you, I said. I can't make the loans go away, or the audits disappear, or the house unsell itself. I won't tell lies to your clients or your bosses or your ex-in-laws just because the truth finally cost you something. That's not my job. It never should have been. I glanced at Chloe. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life chained to what you did either, I added, looking back at my parents and my brother. Whatever happens after tonight, happens. You'll either learn from it or you won't. That's on you. My mom sobbed harder. My dad opened his mouth like he had one more argument ready, one last pitch. I held up a hand. I have a show to do, I said. The first time I told you I wanted to be a comedian, you laughed in my face. Tonight, thousands of people paid to hear me speak. I'm not going to miss that because you finally noticed I exist. I nodded at my manager and walked away, feeling their eyes burning into my back. As I stepped into the wings, the roar of the crowd washed over me, warm and impossibly huge. The stage manager handed me the mic. The intro music hit. I walked out into the lights, and for a second, I could not see anything but shapes and shadows. Then the applause faded just enough for me to hear my own voice. So, I began. I went home for the first time in 5 years, and my mom greeted me with the kind of warmth you usually reserve for a raccoon in your trash can. The audience laughed. I told them the porch story again. But here's the thing. Under all the jokes, I told them something else too. I told them about boundaries, about how you're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they share your last name. I told them about how success doesn't magically heal the wounds people gave you on purpose, but it can give you the space to stop letting those wounds define you. I told them that revenge feels good in the way fast food feels good when you're starving. It hits, it fills you, and then if you're not careful, it just sits there, making you sick. I told them what my therapist told me when I first started planning all this, that the opposite of being powerless isn't making other people powerless. It's choosing not to play their game anymore. Every time I landed a punchline about fake perfect families, people laughed because they recognized themselves, not my parents. After the show, during the meet and greet, a woman my age hugged me so hard I almost lost my breath. "Your story is my story," she said. "Except I'm still in the part where I'm too scared to leave. Please keep telling it. It helps." In that moment, my family felt very small. Later, in the now empty green room, my phone buzzed with a new message from Chloe. "I meant what I said," she wrote. "I'm looking for an apartment. I blocked Mom on Instagram for a day just to see what it feels like. It felt quiet. If you ever want to talk, as just two messed up girls trying to do better than what we were taught, I'm here. If not, I understand. I'm sorry." I sat there with the phone in my hand for a long time. Then I typed back one line. "When you're really out, call me. We can figure out who we are without them." That was as much forgiveness as I had in me, and it was enough. People ask me now if I regret what I did. If I ever feel bad when I think about my mother on her knees outside that theater. I tell them the truth. I don't regret telling my story. I don't regret letting the consequences of my parents' choices finally land where they belonged. But the older I get, the more I understand that the real victory was not watching them fall. It was learning that I didn't have to. The lesson, if there is one, is this: don't build your life on someone else's idea of success, especially if they use it as a weapon. Don't stay where you're only loved for what you can give, or how you make them look. Find people who like you when you're not performing, who listen when you say you're hurt instead of telling you to take a joke. And if you grew up in a house where family meant, we get to hurt you and you have to stay, I'm living proof that you're allowed to leave, to tell the truth, and to build something better. You don't have to turn it into a comedy special. You just have to turn it into a life.